So once you've got that language and you are all on the same page as a family, or you're on the same page as your partner or your child, then start to use that language and make time each day to use that language. And it's not about drawing attention to things, but it's about assessing and reflecting all the time. And as you move through that process, your child will then, or your partner will then, learn how to reflect themselves. Okay, then you can then start to think about strategies. But it's that reflection and that self-awareness that is so important. And your child is going through something that maybe they don't understand at the moment. They haven't got a clue why everybody else can wear their hair down and they just cannot cope with wearing it down. They don't know that. All they will see, or all they will recognise, is actually I'm a little bit, I'm different to everybody else, or I'm not the same as everybody else, or I'm a bit, I'm not normal. And those kind of views are the ones we want to squash. Because actually everybody's really different, and if we had really open, honest conversations with people, we all do things that are very quirky. We just don't tell people about it, or it doesn't become as apparent because it doesn't enter into our everyday life outside of our four walls. So use time each day to check in with your child. And have honest, open conversations. And what I mean by that is, if those nylon socks do feel crusty, then okay, let's go and find some shops, some socks from a shop that you feel comfortable with. Because what you are then starting to do is you are starting to work on strategies. If you know that having orange juice or apple juice usually means that your child's behaviour is quite negative afterwards, then having those honest conversations with your child or your teenager, or even your partner, because it doesn't go away. If you are very sensitive to e-colourings, or you're sensitive to high sugared drinks, as an adult, you will still be highly sensitive to those. So having those honest conversations without saying, no, you can't have them, as you move through the journey, thinking about those honest conversations where actually you can have the apple juice, but my advice might be, after you've had the apple juice, is to spend some time doing an activity outside, which is going to use up some of your energy. Or compromise on things that you know are going to make things difficult for your child. Open, honest conversations in a language that your child is feeling in control of. Okay? Because that element of control is what your child will probably need right about now if they're going through assessments, or if they've been suspended from school, or if they are looking around and they're thinking, I am not like anybody else in my class, or I'm not going to birthday parties, or I'm not going to after school clubs. They're aware of that, but they need to start to have open, honest conversations as to what is actually bothering them. And this should be, you can do this by observation, but ultimately we want this led by the child. Because if we then start, we've watched a programme on autism last night, so then we start to see things in our child that may not be there, or we might say to them, well, that person's got autism, you don't do that. So we have to be careful on those honest conversations, but it's ultimately an honest conversation about your child, and every single child is going to be different, and every diagnosis is going to be different, and every toolbox of strategies is going to be different. So making a safe place, getting a language that you understand about your child, checking in with them and getting them to be aware that their feelings, their opinions are validated, and self-awareness. You know, this is how their brain works, this is how their senses work, and that is okay. Once you start doing that, you're then removing pressures, because you're removing pressures of your child thinking they have to be like other people. And once those pressures are removed, then your child and you can also start to move on. And then the last piece of advice that I would give, the big piece of advice, would be about how you're feeling. Because very often when we are going through something with our children, you know, it may be that we're being called into school all the time, it may be that we feel that people are not listening to us, it may be that we are, we've had a child who has just been diagnosed with autism, and then we start to look at our behaviours and we start to almost self-assess. Have they got that because I've got that? And actually, am I autistic as well? That is a very common thing that happens. And naturally so, because as parents, we're looking for an answer and we're looking for a fix-it. There is no, short-term fix-it. It's not your child has this and this is how you're going to fix it. It is a process, and it is nobody's fault. And not putting your feelings onto your children can really help. So there's times where you're going to be frustrated. There's times where people are going to say things to you and you think, oh, shut up. I've heard it all before. And brilliant, validate your feelings, but do not validate your frustrations in front of your child. So, have those conversations, but just be mindful that actually your child now needs support around them. And we call it scaffolding, we call it in education. And, they need that scaffolding from every support source they can get a hold of. So if they see that parents are speaking very negatively about a professional, or if they see that they are, mum's getting really, or dad's getting really angry or annoyed, if they see that, then as children, or your children, they are going to feel like then they are a problem to you. And then that spoils your circle of safe space and communication. Okay, so let it out to somebody, absolutely. And there's lots of support groups around. Can just be a friend as well. Just I'm going through this and this is how I feel right now. But do not do that in front or to your child. Okay, because ultimately, the ultimate thing is actually you want all the professionals that you can help in your child and you and your family, and you can move forward. But as I say, that's not a quick process. That takes time, because we have to, you have to, and the professionals have to learn about that young person. And it is about learning about that young person. What I think sometimes will happen is when a child or a family member is diagnosed with something, we as human beings then think we have to be experts in that field. And, it's like when you've got an illness, you're not sure what it is, and then you start Googling it, and then you've kind of buried yourself already. That's dangerous. And it's not helpful, and it's not conducive, because what you want to do in your household is remove anxieties and remove pressures. So reading books on things or articles, or watching programs on barriers or special educational needs or mental health disorders can be really informative. However, ultimately it is about you learning what is right in front of you. And everybody is so different, and rightly so, and we should be different. So, you know, jumping on bandwagons and comparing needs with other parents who have got children with needs can put you in quite a dangerous cycle there. So it ultimately, bring it back to your child every time, you know. And we hear things like, oh, they can't have autism because they can give good eye contact, or well, they haven't got ADHD because they're not bouncing off the walls. You know, this is not true, and that is why we have professionals that have studied it for years and years and years, and they have their input. And then you know, the best toolbox is really for a family to understand their child, and then ultimately that child to understand themselves. So that self-awareness comes again. You know, and we go through life and we go through, you know, our self-awareness can be jarred sometimes, and we go through experiences where we will question all of our self-awareness, but ultimately the best toolbox is that we can understand ourselves and move forward, understanding ourselves. So it's probably longer than what I thought, but the video, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, you know, remove pressure from yourself. Don't need to be an expert. Remove pressure from your children. Listen to professionals, and just observe. You know, observe and learn and listen to your children. I hope that was helpful. And of course, you know, anybody can reach out to us at any time, but hopefully that just gives, you know, a little bit of insight to a few things that you can do. You know, it's a tough time. It is a tough time, and it's a tough time for parents, it's a tough time for families, for siblings, but ultimately it's an even tougher time for that child that's going through it. So, yeah.